Hello YouTube, it's Hontown here and I'm back with a new episode of Eerie Greece, the show that explores the dark side of Greek legends and folklore. Perhaps one of the creepiest topics across various cultures when it comes to discussions related to the supernatural is that of haunted houses, abandoned buildings that may not be as empty as you think, with rumors of pale lights flickering across cracked window panes, dark figures staring out of attic windows, and screams echoing from behind withered doors being a common thread of discussion when it comes to the testimonies of people claiming to have experienced unnatural happenings in those places. And just like with other countries of the world, Greece has its very own haunted houses dotting its expanse, with one of the most famous ones actually located in its second biggest city, Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is quite old, and throughout its centuries of existence it has been home to a variety of different people from all walks of life and culture. People who, in turn, gave birth to many different myths and legends that linger across its shadowed corners and dark alleys to this day. But if there's one such piece of folklore that has consistently troubled believers and skeptics alike, that is an old, dilapidated manor located a bit outside of the city's center, which many people call the haunted house of Vasilissis Olgas, referring to the mansion's street address. That particular manor, along with the piece of land it's built upon, has been the center of speculation for more than 100 years ever since its construction started back in 1918 due to its alleged status as a haunted location, with many people having reported disturbing occurrences they either experienced personally or heard were suffered by others. But in order for this whole thing to make sense, we need to take things from the start. Before we begin, I do wish to clarify that everything mentioned from here on out is pieced together by unproved rumors and testimonies, so it should by no means be perceived as fact, but more of an attempt to understand the horrible history of that place, which may be a haunting of its own. The earliest claimed tragedy to have transpired in relation to that location took place even before the actual construction of the manor, back when Greece was still under the rule of the Ottoman Empire. During that time, the piece of land that would eventually have the mansion built upon it was a grape field owned by a Turkish lord who had a harem of women in his possession. One of those women eventually turned on him due to years of abuse, and in retaliation he had her hanged in that field and later claimed that she had taken her own life, marking the first referenced time when blood would be spilled upon that land, but definitely not the last. Following that horrible occurrence, we jump to the year 1918, when the mansion actually started being built, a year after the Great Fire that destroyed the majority of Thessaloniki in 1917. The manor's building was a troubled endeavor, though no one seems to be able to give any information as to the exact reason why. All that's been said is that the house took many years to complete construction, with some claiming it was finished in 1922 and others in 1924, and it was around that time frame when rumors began to circulate about the land being somehow cursed, hence the delays in completion. However, it wasn't until after the place was erected that the unexplainable happenings truly started. The alleged initial owners of the house were a couple who immediately sensed something was off about their abode following eerie sounds that would torment them during nighttime, which led to them selling the place to rid themselves of its malediction. Next, the manor came to the ownership of two brothers who established it as a gambling den, though it wouldn't stay one for long since the place was eventually seized by the Nazis during their occupation and turned to an interrogation center, which was a glorified name for the torture dungeon it had become, with the blood of the unfortunate souls that ended up in its dark holes being added to that of the poor girl that had been hanged there all those decades ago. Even after the end of the Second World War, people claimed to still be able to hear screams and pleading coming from inside the manor's basement, further strengthening belief in its haunted nature. The next testimony of the manor's occupancy was related to a group of Greek refugees that hid there during the Greek Civil War, who fled the place after hearing creepy noises and disturbing whispers. A family that rented the house a bit later abandoned it for the same reasons. Following years of neglect and lack of tenants, people began reporting lights shining from inside the manor, though the more restrained minds attributed those sightings to thieves who wanted to plunder the place, given that there were rumors of gold and jewelry having been stored in it from its days as a gambling den. At that point, we're in the mid-80s and the mansion's infamy has no end in sight. By then, the house's ownership was divided across several individuals who decided to make some renovations as they tried to figure out how to utilize it, a decision that would lead to more tragedy. More specifically, the contractor who took over the project died from a heart attack, while the architect and engineer lost their lives in a car accident. A known photographer who lives in Thessaloniki eventually decided to visit the place in order to try and make sense of the curse that plagues it. Following his entry to the manor, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen that led to him dropping his camera, which broke. What's interesting, however, was that aside from the camera, he also had a voice recorder device rolling, which he had brought in order to capture the alleged sounds that permeated the manor. After gathering his broken equipment, he left the property and played the recording, at which point he noticed there was a 7-second gap in between the cacophony of dogs barking and cars driving down the street outside. When he returned home and replayed the recording, he enhanced the sound during those 7 seconds and said he could hear heavy footsteps coming his way, followed by unintelligible whispers. The latest known report of the manor's unnatural state comes from a woman that's a self-proclaimed medium. A few years back, she visited the manor in an attempt to solve the mystery of the dread surrounding it, and claimed that she managed to contact the spirit responsible for the haunting, which identified itself as the woman who had been murdered by the Turkish lord, meaning it was that initial tragedy that tainted the land, that first drop of blood that allowed the tree of misery to bloom from the soil. That is, of course, if any of these rumors are to be believed. Could it be that the colloquially titled Haunted House of Vasilissis Sofias is actually plagued by a supernatural entity? Maybe, but it is also quite possible that all of the aforementioned unnatural occurrences can simply be results of more mundane things. The lights, as explained before, are believed by skeptics to be born from lanterns and flashlights of plunderers throughout the years, and the eerie sounds could just be the noises of an old house settling or the wind howling, all of which take a more sinister turn when viewed through a superstitious lens. Some of those reports could also be flat-out lies of individuals seeking attention. Even the deaths of the workers who were supposed to fix the house could just be an unfortunate coincidence. But it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Could it maybe be a bit of both? Could it be that the things that happened there in the past were so horrifying that they left something behind? Some lingering traces of suffering that echo through time, though not inside the manor's halls, but inside the minds of the people that witnessed them in the first place? What if you were one of the first individuals to discover that poor girl hanging inside the field, her glassy eyes boring into yours, maybe with a hint of wrath at the injustice she suffered? What if she wasn't the first one to be murdered in that field? It wouldn't be long before people started saying that place was drowned in bad energy or even cursed with all the death surrounding it. And what if you lived close to that mansion back when people were tortured in it, forced to hear their screams and pleads for mercy over and over again? What are the odds that maybe you would keep hearing them even though they were no longer there, thus giving birth to rumors situated somewhere between truth and fiction? And if that's the case, is it the manor that is haunted or those that brought forth its haunting in the first place? Today, the haunted mansion of Thessaloniki is being used as storage space for construction material, with its owners unable to decide on what course of action to follow with it, and maybe that's for the best. Maybe that's a piece of land that was never meant to have any property built upon it, which in turn led to a house that was never meant to be inhabited by anyone. Maybe the suffering experienced in that place left behind a taint so deep that no amount of time passed will ever be enough to heal it. Maybe it's one of those places meant to simply be left alone and forgotten.